There are certain restaurants in every city that exist primarily to communicate something. Not to feed people, exactly, though they do that, and do it well, but to say something about the evening, about the person who chose the venue, about the level of seriousness being brought to whatever occasion has gathered people inside. The Meridian was that kind of restaurant. Crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths and a view of the city skyline that had been engineered by someone who understood that the right backdrop makes everything inside it feel more significant. It was a Saturday evening in September, and Caroline Whitfield had reserved a table for two by the window. She was 41 years old, the founder and CEO of a healthcare technology company that had spent the past 3 years becoming the kind of company that appeared in magazine profiles under words like visionary and transformative, which Caroline read with the private amusement of someone who knows how much unglamorous work lives underneath glamorous adjectives. She was, by any external measure, a woman who had built something remarkable. She was also, by any honest internal measure, a woman who had spent so much of the past decade building it that the rest of her life had been allowed to run somewhat lean. The blind date had been her college roommate Patricia's idea, presented with the particular persistence of a friend who has been patient for 2 years and has decided that patience has its limits. His name is Ben, Patricia had said. He's kind and he's interesting and he has good values and you will like him. Just go. Caroline had agreed, partly because Patricia was usually right about people and partly because the alternative was another Saturday evening working, which she had done enough of that even she was beginning to find it repetitive. She had arrived at 7 on the dot, which was when she arrived at everything, and been seated at the window table, and ordered water, and waited. At 7:14, the restaurant's revolving door turned, and a man walked in. He was tall, dark-haired, in a navy suit that fit well and a shirt open at the collar, the kind of dressed up that suggests a person who cleans up nicely but doesn't live in formal clothes. He was carrying a toddler on his right hip. Beside him walked a boy of perhaps 7, hands in his pockets, with the rolling, unhurried gait of someone entirely comfortable in his own skin. Behind them both, a boy of perhaps 10, who was looking around the restaurant with the alert, assessing attention of an oldest child who has learned to read rooms in advance. Caroline set down her water glass. She would learn, over the course of the next 3 hours, how this had happened. But in the first 30 seconds, watching Ben Calloway navigate the Meridian's entrance with a toddler on his hip and 2 boys at his sides, what she registered, before anything else, before the conversation, before the explanation, before any of the context that would eventually make perfect sense, was his face. He was not apologetic. That was the thing. He was not doing the performance of a man who knows he has done something unconventional and is managing the audience's reaction. He was simply coming through a door with his children, in the same way he came through every door with his children, because that was the shape of his life and he had made his peace with its shape a long time ago. He spotted her at the window table. Their eyes met across the restaurant. And then, because he was apparently a man who addressed things directly rather than letting them build, he walked toward her, and when he arrived he said, before hello, before his name, before anything else, "I'm so sorry. I know this is not what was arranged." Owen, he glanced at the toddler, who was examining the chandelier with scientific interest, had a fever yesterday and our sitter cancelled tonight because she thought he might still be contagious, which is fair, and my backup sitter is at her daughter's recital, and I called Patricia to explain that I would need to reschedule but she said, a brief pause, she said you would understand, and that if I cancelled she would never forgive me, and in my experience Patricia means that, so here we are. He looked at her steadily. I'm Ben. These are my sons. We can absolutely leave if this is not all right. Caroline looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the 3 boys, the toddler with the chandelier fixation, the 7-year-old who was eyeing the bread basket on the neighboring table with frank interest, the 10-year-old who was looking at Caroline with the evaluating attention of someone taking a responsible interest in his father's affairs. Sit down, Caroline said. All of you. Their names were Owen, who was 2 and who had apparently fully recovered from his fever and was now operating at complete toddler capacity, Marcus, who was 7 and who had, within 4 minutes of sitting down, identified the bread basket as a priority and addressed it with focused efficiency, and Daniel, who was 10 and who introduced himself to Caroline with a handshake that suggested someone had taught him to do this and he had taken the lesson seriously. "I'm Daniel," he said. "I'm sorry we crashed your date." "You didn't crash it," Caroline said. "You arrived at it." Daniel considered this distinction. "That's a nice way to put it," he said, with the tone of someone cataloging a useful rhetorical approach. Ben was getting Owen settled in a high chair that the waiter had produced with the smooth professionalism of a staff that had accommodated many variations of a standard evening and had opinions about none of them. He looked up and caught Caroline's expression, which was, she was aware, not the expression a person typically wears at the beginning of a blind date at the Meridian, and something in his face did a quick, quiet recalibration. "You're not upset," he said. "Not a question. Just surprised." Carefully. "I'm not," Caroline said. And she wasn't, which was itself surprising, because Caroline Whitfield had strong preferences about many things, and a quietly prepared Saturday evening at a good restaurant was among them, and she would have expected to feel the friction of the evening going differently than arranged. She didn't feel friction. She felt something more like interest. "Tell me about them," she said. Ben looked at her for another moment, the look of a man updating an expectation in real time, and then he sat down and told her. Their mother, Rachel, had died 3 years ago. Ben said this the way he said most things, directly, without making it a performance, with the particular steadiness of someone who has had 3 years to find the shape of a loss and learn to carry it in a way that doesn't require everyone around him to manage it. Rachel had been a nurse. She had been funny and precise and had the talent, Ben said, of making every person she talked to feel like the most interesting person in the room, which was a talent he had spent 3 years trying to describe to their sons in ways they would understand and remember. He had been an architect before. He had taken a leave from the firm when Rachel got sick, and when she was gone the leave had become something else, not a departure exactly, but a recalibration. He did freelance work now, project-based, the kind that could be done from home when needed, from the office when not. It was less prestigious than the firm position. It was also compatible with school pickup, which was the relevant variable. "Do you miss it?" Caroline asked. "The firm." Ben thought about this. "I miss the scale of the projects," he said. "The big things. But I was always better at the details anyway. The small decisions that make a building feel like it was built by someone who thought about the person who would live in it." He glanced at Marcus, who had moved on from the bread and was now constructing something architectural with the sugar packets. "I'm still doing that. Just in a different building." Caroline looked at Marcus's sugar packet construction, which had achieved a surprising degree of structural ambition for a Saturday evening at the Meridian. "That's genuinely impressive," she said. Marcus looked up. "It's going to be a bridge," he said. "But I need more packets." "I'll ask the waiter," Caroline said, and did. The evening arranged itself around the children in a way that Caroline had not experienced before and found, to her own ongoing surprise, entirely absorbing. Dinner with a toddler and 2 boys in a restaurant designed for quiet adult occasions was not what she had prepared for, but it was, she was discovering, considerably more interesting. There was no performance happening. Nobody was presenting their best self with careful management, or rather, everyone's best self was simply present, unmanaged, because the boys required a level of genuine engagement that left no bandwidth for social curation. Owen fell asleep against Ben's shoulder somewhere between the main course and dessert, in the sudden, total way of toddlers who have been running on the last reserves of energy and have simply run out. Ben transferred him to his lap with the practiced ease of a man who had done this in every variety of location and circumstance, and kept eating left-handed, and the conversation didn't stop. Daniel told her about a book he was reading, and when she said she'd read it too, his expression did the thing that happens when a person of any age finds unexpected common ground, a quick, genuine brightening. "What did you think about the ending?" he asked. "I thought it earned it," Caroline said. But I didn't see it coming, which I think is the point. Daniel nodded, satisfied. That's what I thought, he said. Dad didn't see it coming either. I was distracted, Ben said. Owen had learned to open the refrigerator that week. The orange juice incident, Marcus said, without looking up from his bridge. We don't need to, Ben started. There was a lot of orange juice, Marcus said, with the tone of a historian recording events. There was, Ben confirmed. Caroline laughed, a real one, the kind that comes up without deciding to. The kind she hadn't felt at a dinner table in a while. The waiter brought dessert menus. Owen slept. Marcus's bridge reached completion and was deemed structurally sound by its architect. Daniel asked Caroline what her company did, with the genuine curiosity of a boy who had been raised to think that what people did with their time was worth understanding, and she explained it in the way she explained it to people who were new to it, starting with the problem rather than the solution, the way her best mentor had taught her, because the problem is always more interesting than the solution if you tell it right. Daniel listened carefully. Then he said, so you make it so doctors can see the information they need faster. Essentially, Caroline said. That seems important, Daniel said. Like if a doctor had seen Mom's information faster, he stopped. Just briefly. The stop of someone who has gone somewhere and decided, at the last moment, not to go all the way there in present company. The table was quiet for a moment. Ben's hand moved to Daniel's shoulder, the brief, specific contact of a parent who knows exactly what just happened and is acknowledging it without making it larger than the moment needs. It matters, Caroline said gently. What we're building. I'm glad you understand why. Daniel nodded. Then he picked up his dessert menu with the deliberate movement of someone changing a channel, and said, do you think they'd let Marcus get 2 desserts if I only get 1? Absolutely not, Ben said. What if Owen doesn't want his? Marcus offered. Owen is asleep, Ben said. He can't want things if he's asleep, Marcus reasoned. He can when he wakes up, Ben said. That's future Owen's problem, Marcus said. Caroline was laughing again before she'd noticed it starting. They left the restaurant at 9:30, which was later than Ben had intended and earlier than Caroline had wanted, which was a thing she noted privately with the small, clear awareness of someone who has learned to pay attention to what she actually wants as distinct from what she expected to want. The boys said goodbye with varying levels of formality, Daniel with another handshake, Marcus with a wave from inside Ben's jacket where he had apparently lodged himself for warmth, Owen with the total unconsciousness of someone who had been asleep for 2 hours and had no opinion on departures. Ben transferred Owen to his other shoulder and looked at Caroline in the amber light outside the restaurant, the city doing its nighttime things around them. I know this was not what Patricia described, he said. No, Caroline agreed. I'm sorry it wasn't. Ben, she said. I had a better evening than I've had in a long time. She said it simply, because it was simply true, and she was too old and too tired of performance to dress truth up in anything. I'd like to do it again. He looked at her for a moment. With or without the boys? She considered this, genuinely, with the honest consideration she gave to things that deserved it. With, she said. But maybe somewhere with crayons. Ben's face did something then, something she would think about on the drive home and in the days that followed, something that was not quite a smile and not quite relief and was entirely itself, the specific expression of a man who has been carrying things alone for 3 years and has just, quietly, and without ceremony, been offered a different arrangement. I know a place, he said. They said good night on the sidewalk outside the Meridian, and went their separate ways into the September evening, and the city kept going around them the way cities do, entirely indifferent to what had just happened inside a restaurant by a window, which was, in its simple unremarkable way, something that changes things. The kind of evening that becomes, in the telling of it years later, the evening. The one where everything shifted. The one where a toddler fell asleep and a 7-year-old built a bridge and a 10-year-old shook a woman's hand seriously and a man came through a door with his children and didn't apologize for the shape of his life. And a woman looked at that shape and recognized it, without knowing quite why, as something she had been making room for.